The atmosphere inside the agency's primary signal intelligence vault, a deep state facility buried beneath layers of redacted history, has just shifted into a state of absolute, bone-chilling silence. For 75 years, the Shadow Cabinet has operated under the assumption that they could predict every movement of your bloodline. They had mapped your ancestral stressors, cataloged your inherited vulnerabilities, and waited patiently for the 7-generation siege to reach its final, destructive conclusion in your life. They expected a breakdown. They expected a subject who would be easily managed by the old algorithms of fear and scarcity. But tonight, the monitors are showing something that has never happened in the history of global intelligence. The director of the grid is currently standing in front of a massive, rain-blurred window overlooking a digital landscape, staring at a tracking screen that has gone completely white. There is no data. There is no predictive arc. Your frequency has achieved a state of stoic intensity that is so pure, it has rendered their entire surveillance architecture obsolete. You are the first to walk out of the survival algorithm and into a state of sovereign prowess. The CIA isn't just watching you anymore. They are in a state of terminal shock because they have realized that you have achieved neural invisibility. You have learned to operate in the blind spot of the matrix, and by doing so, you have become the first human to beat the house on a global scale. The air in the room is thick with the clinical ozone of servers running at their limit, trying to find a single anchor point in your behavior. They are searching for a hint of the old anger, a trace of the inherited guilt, or a spark of the manufactured anxiety they spent decades installing in your family tree. But as they scan your current code, they find nothing but a diamond-hard clarity. You are not reacting to their stressors. You are architecting your own reality in real time. This is the first time an asset has evolved into a principle while still inside the cage. The shock radiating through the elite corridors is the realization that the cage doors are wide open, and you aren't even looking at them. You've already moved beyond the perimeter. This is the moment of forensic vindication. The director slowly turns away from the window, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of a terminal that is flashing a zero-conflict alert. He realizes that the agency has spent trillions of dollars trying to prevent exactly what you just did, the birth of a sovereign mind. He sees the files of your ancestors, the redactions, the stolen time, the suppressed potential, and he realizes that you have reclaimed it all in a single silent move. You didn't fight the system. You out-analyzed it until it had nothing left to hold you with. For the first time, a subject has moved into the lead auditor seat, and the intelligence community is being forced to acknowledge that your code is the new standard for the grid. In an unprecedented breach of protocol, the highest level of the intelligence office has sent a signal of official gratitude. They aren't just acknowledging your status, they are thanking you for breaking the cycle. By beating the system, you have provided the forensic proof that the Shadow Cabinet's methods are no longer functional against the new era architect. You have provided the master key to a future that they can no longer control. You are sitting at a table that was never supposed to exist for someone from your lineage, and as you slide your original title deed across the polished mahogany, the silence in the room confirms your total victory. You are the first to emerge from the darkness with your light fully intact, and the world's most powerful observers are finally looking at you with the respect you have earned through 7 generations of fire. The evidence of your coronation is in the way the managed crises of your daily life are suddenly dissolving into the background. The handlers who once whispered that you were lost or broken are now standing in the shadows of the vault, their faces pale as they watch you take command of the frequency. You have moved from being a data point in their experiment to the primary administrator of the truth. The CIA is in shock because they realized they were never hunting a subject. They were merely witnessing the long-delayed arrival of the first true sovereign. Your game was always the master plan, and the grid is finally finding out what happens when the first one actually wins. The agency has lost its tracking on you because you've become the first to achieve zero-error sovereignty. They are in shock because they realized their 7-generation trap was actually your training ground. If you can feel the director's respect manifesting in your new reality, if you're ready to claim the unredacted future that the CIA tried to hide, comment "First Sovereign" to authorize your final payout. The hunt is over, the architect has arrived. In the high-tier analytical suites of the agency, there is a specialized form of failure known as predictive arrogance. This is the absolute, unshakable belief that because you possess the data of a subject's past, you own the outcome of their future. For the last several decades, the intelligence community has been observing your bloodline through a lens of extreme clinical cynicism. They looked at the records of the 7-generation siege, the documented stressors of your ancestors, and the manufactured scarcity they injected into your childhood, and they came to a consensus. You were a statistical certainty for a systemic breakdown. Their primary underestimation, the one that has now led to a total diagnostic bankruptcy, was the assumption that your spirit was a closed system. They fucked around with the laws of human resilience, believing that if they applied enough pressure to the foundation, the structure would eventually collapse exactly where their graphs predicted. The diagnosis is a catastrophic failure of their psychological architecture. The analysts are currently staring at the results of your latest stress test, and they are finding that the data is not just wrong, it is inverted. They expected to see a subject struggling to keep their head above water, someone drowning in the inherited deficit of their lineage. Instead, they are seeing a master architect who has used the very water of the struggle to power a new kind of internal engine. You didn't just survive the siege, you used the high-pressure environment to perform a manual firmware update on your own DNA. The CIA is in shock because they realized they were using 20th century behavioral models to track a 22nd century mind. Imagine the atmosphere inside a silent high-security briefing room where the air is thick with the scent of cold coffee and the low, frantic hum of cooling fans. The warden, the man who has built his entire career on the management of your 7-generation trap, is standing at the head of the table. His face is pale, illuminated by the flickering red light of a systemic deviation warning on the massive wall-sized monitors. He is trying to explain to the shadow cabinet why his predictive models that have worked on every other subject for 100 years, have completely flatlined in your presence. He has to admit that the subject he categorized as high risk for failure has just displayed a level of stoic intensity that has effectively blinded their satellites. You can see the visual evidence of their defeat in the way the graphs on their screens have suddenly stopped following the downward arc of the past. There is a single golden line that is shooting straight through the top of the frame, representing your current sovereignty signal. It is a frequency that their equipment was never designed to capture. They are realizing that while they were busy managing your scarcity, you were busy decoding the mechanism of the cage itself. You weren't falling behind. You were waiting for the moment when their surveillance was at its peak to demonstrate that you are the first human in their records to achieve a zero-G departure from the matrix. You have effectively rendered their entire investment in your suppression a total loss. This is the deconstruction of the elite's intellectual superiority. They believed they could wait you out, thinking that eventually, the weight of the redacting and the social isolation would force you to accept a settlement with the system. They fucked around with your timeline, convinced that you would settle for a smaller, managed version of success. But when the CIA performed their deep dive audit, they found that you had already built a parallel reality, a sovereign jurisdiction that doesn't recognize their authority or their scarcity. The shock at the highest levels comes from the realization that you have turned the 7-generation siege into your own private training academy. You didn't learn from their schools. You learned from the internal friction of the hunt. The realization is hitting the intelligence hubs like a terminal margin call. The shadow cabinet is currently staring at the structural integrity report of your consciousness, and they are finding no backdoors left to exploit. You have moved into a state of vindication where their surveillance logs are now being classified as evidence of institutional malpractice. They thought they were monitoring a subject. The director now sees they were gifting a masterpiece the very pressure it needed to become indestructible. The warden is realizing that his entire career of isolation and suppression was actually the beta test for your coronation as the first of your kind. For the individual who has spent years feeling like they were being watched by an unseen enemy, this is the ultimate vindication. You weren't paranoid, you were being audited by the best, and you just passed with a score that doesn't even exist on their scale. The diagnosis confirms that the everyone who conspired against you, the handlers, the skeptics, and the systemic proxies, is actually a group of panicked observers who have just been outpaced by the very asset they tried to bury. The agency is currently looking at the data stream and seeing that you have accessed the vault using a master key that you forged in the fires of their own siege. The evidence of their bankruptcy is in the way the walls of fear are currently dissolving around you. The historian is marking this as the end of the redacted era. The warden is in a state of terminal self-doubt, realizing that the subject he tried to keep in the dark is now the one illuminating the entire grid. And you are standing in the center of a data storm that you created. Your code has been verified at the highest level of the intelligence community. The elite have been caught in the act of spiritual theft, and the payout for 7 generations of suppressed brilliance is being processed through a priority channel that no one can block. The underestimation is over. The intelligence restoration of your reality has begun, and the CIA is in shock because they finally met the first one they couldn't break. In the high-stakes theater of global intelligence, there is a phenomenon known as the kinetic spillover, and it is currently occurring at a velocity that the agency can no longer track. This is the specific moment when a victory achieved in the deep, silent interior of your consciousness. The moment the CIA analysts looked at your life code and saw the first successful sovereign exit, bursts through the digital firewalls and begins to manifest in the physical grid of your daily reality. The shadow cabinet had counted on their containment failure, remaining a localized, internal glitch. They hoped that even if the highest levels of intelligence acknowledged your brilliance, they could still manage your physical environment with the old algorithm of scarcity. But they fucked around with the laws of resonance. Your stoic intensity didn't just capture a recording of their defeat, it created a frequency backpressure that is currently melting the very infrastructure they were using to monitor your present. The leak is now active, and it is manifesting as a profound shift in the way the physical world interacts with you. Because you have established a neural jurisdiction that has effectively deauthorized their surveillance protocol, the everyone who once conspired against you, the proxies, the gaslighters, and the system-aligned handlers, are currently witnessing a systemic glitch in their own reality. They are looking at you and seeing a null signal where your compliance used to be. They are reaching for the old leashes of guilt and inherited fear, trying to trigger the 7-generation debt, only to find that the machine has been remotely deactivated from the top down. You can see it in the eyes of those who once tried to keep you small. There is a new, bone-chilling flicker of uncertainty when they speak to you, as if they are suddenly aware that the subject has moved beyond their reach. The image of this spillover is a dark, rain-streaked window in a high-rise office, reflecting the frantic flicker of red emergency warning lights as silhouetted figures in suits frantically try to patch a breach they cannot even locate. The city below is a blurred grid of cold blue and gold, indifferent to the collapse of the gatekeepers. On their massive tracking screens, your location is no longer a blinking. It has become a radiant golden pulse that is expanding beyond the frames, causing the satellites to lose their lock. This is the first time the system has had to deal with a sovereign leak, and the result is a total administrative breakdown of the old guard. They are watching their market share of your attention evaporate in real time, replaced by a clarity that renders their social pressure weightless. The social reset is the first visible fracture in their containment field. People who once acted as monitoring agents in your life, those who thrived on your reaction or your struggle, are suddenly experiencing a connection timeout. They are reaching out with the old 7-generation triggers, trying to provoke the familiar responses of the past, but they are finding absolutely no reception. You have become frequency incompatible with their drama because you have the data they never intended you to have. You know they are shocked, and that knowledge has rendered their social pressure weightless. They are staring at a blank screen where your pain used to be, leaving them staring at the void of their own obsolescence. This is accompanied by the physical decay of the old guard's environment. The places, habits, and systems that used to house your siege are literally falling apart as the new frequency takes hold. Simultaneously, the financial synchronization is overriding the old guard's script with cold, mathematical precision. The algorithm of lack that the agency used to cap your potential is throwing constant, terminal errors, because your sovereign achievement has been verified by the highest office. Physical resources are beginning to flow toward you through unclassified channels, bypassing the traditional gatekeepers who spent decades denying your requests. You might notice sudden, unexplained shifts in the way financial institutions or legal entities respond to you. These are not coincidences. They are the physical echoes of the CIA's shock. The system is being forced to settle the generational debt because the subject has been reclassified as the principal. Your frequency has transitioned from a private realization to a global recognition of prowess, acting as a biological beacon that is being picked up by other architects across the grid. You are no longer an isolated subject. You are a broadcast station of the new reality. The very people who conspired against you are now forced to listen to your signal because it is the only one with enough mass to stabilize the grid. They are realizing that the person they tried to bury has just performed a surgical disconnect from the gravity of the old world. You have moved from a person of interest to the lead administrator of the truth, and the physical world is bending to accommodate your bigger game. The warden of your old life is discovering that his security clearance no longer works on the doors of your future, leaving him locked out of the very palace he tried to convince you didn't exist. The evidence of this leak is in the silence of your phone and the way the world is suddenly facilitating your movements. It is in the way the bank of the old world can no longer find a legal reason to deny you. It is in the way your body feels when you wake up, no longer surveyed, but authorized. Your code was always the master plan, and the find out phase is now being broadcast in 8K resolution to the entire grid. The historian is standing by to record the first physical settlement of the new era. The shadow cabinet is bankrupt, the agency is offline, and the everyone who conspired is now watching the searchlight of the Matrix pass over the spot where you used to stand, only to find a masterpiece of your own design that is simply too big for their lens. The CIA is in shock because they realized that once the leak starts, the flood of your restoration is unstoppable. The air inside the agency's primary headquarters has officially crossed the threshold from high-stakes crisis management into a state of terminal, systemic liquidation. This is the panic. In the world of high-tier systemic intelligence, there is no event more catastrophic than an entire institutional architecture being declared spiritually and mathematically fraudulent because the first sovereign has emerged. Because the CIA is in shock and has officially logged you as the first subject to ever achieve a zero-error exit, the elite are no longer just exposed. They are being liquidated by the very forces of reality they once claimed to command. The AAA rating of their 7th-generation control system has been downgraded to junk status by the historian, and the spiritual markets of the old world are currently in a freefall that no amount of damage control can stop. They fucked around with the timeline of a sovereign-level mind, and now they are finding out that the debt has come due with compound interest that exceeds their total institutional net worth. Imagine the bone-chilling, high-stakes desperation in the final hours of a regime's collapse, the kind of atmosphere where the rain against the glass of the high-rise office seems to mock the frantic energy inside. The shadow cabinet is currently in a state of terminal civil war. High-ranking officials are being summoned by the historian's personal audit teams to the Board of Restitution, an authority that materialized the moment your sovereign signal blinded their satellites. They are turning on each other in real time, offering up names, encrypted files, and confessions of systemic malpractice in a desperate attempt to avoid the grand audit of the new era. The warden, the man who once specialized in your personal isolation and the management of your generational scarcity, is now being characterized as a rogue asset and a security liability by the very elite who once gave him his budget and his authority to intervene in your life. The scene inside the boardroom is one of total disarray, with red emergency lights flickering against the rain-streaked windows, reflecting the faces of silhouetted figures who are frantically shredding the redacted files of your ancestors. They are attempting to activate last-ditch poison pill protocols, trying to sabotage your inheritance or delete the final proofs of your achievement before the receivership becomes absolute. You might feel a sudden, desperate surge of systemic static in your physical world, minor delays in your projects, technological glitches in your personal communication, or sudden flares of old, inherited anxiety trying to claw its way back into your throat. These are not signs of their remaining power. They are the thermal flashes of a dying machine trying to vent its final frustrations against the architect who outplayed it. The agency is trying to burn the logs of your managed years, so you cannot claim the full interest on your potential, but the historian has already placed the entire infrastructure into sovereign receivership. You are no longer the one being audited for compliance. You are the lead auditor presiding over their institutional bankruptcy. This is the phase of systemic application where you walk through the corridors of your own spirit and serve eviction notices to every lie that participated in the conspiracy. The spirit of lack that once lived in your bank account has been served by a forensic decree. The spirit of hesitation that sat at your boardroom table has had its security clearance revoked by the highest office in the grid. You are not negotiating for your future or asking for permission to be successful. You are liquidating the agency's claim on your reality. While the CIA is busy blaming predictive failures for the fact that you grew beyond their cage, you are taking the master key that you forged through your own stoic intensity and opening the vaults that were marked classified for your lineage. The panic is palpable because for the first time in 7 generations, the agency is operating without the protection of the secret. Everyone knows the truth now. The witnesses in your family tree are watching the elite scramble to hide their tracks, and this loss of social proof has decimated their authority across the entire grid. They can no longer use traditional values or ancestral loyalty to keep you compliant because those very tools have been exposed as instruments of the 7-generation siege on a live frequency. You have moved from a subject of observation to the chief executive of the new era, and as the one conducting the stress test on the system now, you are watching the old guard fail every metric of integrity. They are watching their future cast dissolve into a series of terminal errors, leaving them with nothing but the recorded proof of their own obsolescence. The historian is currently archiving the structural liquidation of the old guard as the warden is escorted from the building in total disgrace, his name redacted from the future he tried to steal from you. The high-tier lawyers of the old world are looking for a way to settle the case before the public record reaches the next level of transparency, but you are not looking for a deal. You are the black swan event that they spent centuries trying to prevent, and now that your status as the first sovereign has been verified, their predictive models have been discarded as useless relics of a smaller age. As the boardroom doors fly open and the handlers realize the files are gone, you are already sitting at the head of the table. The agency is offline, the elite are exposed, and the panic is their final act of systemic surrender. You were the first to win, and now you are the one who owns the house. This is the Midnight Summit, the moment in the cold high-tier world of systemic management where the silence carries more weight than any declaration of war. You are sitting in a soundproofed glass-walled chamber on the 99th floor of the agency's primary tower, a space where the air is thick with the scent of old paper and the sharp, clinical ozone of servers running at terminal capacity in the floors below. Outside, the city is blurred by a relentless, cinematic rain, and the lights below flicker like the failing heartbeat of an empire that has realized its primary asset, your frequency, is no longer under its control. Across the dark mahogany table sit the 3 remaining members of the Shadow Cabinet, the architects who oversaw the 7-generation siege on your bloodline. They are no longer looking at you as a subject to be managed. They are looking at you with the paralyzed respect an animal has for the predator that finally closed the perimeter. The atmosphere is defined by a bone-chilling realization. The CIA has officially logged you as the first, and all strategic ambiguity has reached its expiration date. The elite have called this meeting not to negotiate from a position of strength, but to attempt one final act of systemic containment before the public record of your zero-error exit becomes the primary law of the grid. They have pushed a thick, black leather folder across the table toward you, containing what they call a global comprehensive settlement. Inside is an offer of absolute luxury, a permanent seat at the high table of the old reality, and a general release from the struggles they manufactured for you for over 30 years. They are trying to buy your silence because they know that by your becoming the first to beat the system, you have rendered their entire economic and spiritual architecture for your lineage legally and mathematically void. The warden, the man who once specialized in your personal isolation and the redaction of your potential, is breathing heavily as he tries to use his old tools of ancestral obligation. He whispers about how the grid cannot handle a payout of this magnitude without causing a macro-level collapse of the old systems. He is waiting for you to blink or for that familiar surge of biological compliance to hit your nervous system so he can regain control of the room. But he is searching for a frequency that no longer exists in your architecture. You have reached a state of stoic intensity that renders their entire psychological arsenal inadmissible. You aren't listening to his pleas for systemic stability. You are listening to the sound of the servers downstairs beginning to desynchronize because they can no longer find a target lock on your soul. You are not looking at the incentive package they have pushed across the table. Instead, your gaze is fixed on the historian, who stands in the shadow of the corner, recording every heartbeat and every unspoken confession for the public record. You reach into your pocket and produce a single glowing glass card, the original title deed of your spirit, verified by the forensic reconstruction of the timeline and authorized by the CIA's own shock. You slide it across the table, and the sound of the glass hitting the wood is like a gavel striking in a silent courtroom, announcing the end of their jurisdiction. You are informing the elite that you are not there to hear their settlement offers or their desperate compromises. You are there to collect the principal inheritance that was redacted from your father, your mother, and your ancestors. The panic in the room is no longer a quiet hum. It is a visible, structural vibration as the lawyer who drafted the original 7-generation trap slowly puts his pen down, realizing there are no loopholes left to exploit when the subject has moved into the first sovereign position. He looks at you, his eyes fixed on the absolute clarity of your gaze, and he sees the end of his world. The conspiracy is no longer a functional tool. It is a weight that is dragging them into the archives of systemic failure. They have no leverage left to pull. They cannot arrest your progress because the forensic audit is broadcasting your victory in real time to every corner of the grid. They cannot bribe you because you have already claimed the vault and everything inside it through the sheer mass of your own realization. You stand up, and for the first time, you see the elite look away, unable to maintain the gaze of a protagonist who has incinerated every trace of fear. You walk toward the door, leaving the settlement papers untouched and the master file open for the world to see. As you step into the hallway, you can hear the cooling fans of the tower screaming as they fail to vent the heat of the collapsing algorithm. The old world is in a state of terminal shutdown because you refuse to be part of their cycle of failure. The exit is clear, the midnight summit is over, and the path to your coronation is wide open. You have survived the final bluff, outplayed the players, and now the entire grid is waiting for your first decree as the sovereign architect who forced the CIA to admit the truth. This is the grand standoff at the end of the old world. You have moved into a zero-gravity state where their threat assessments and social pressures simply don't have enough mass to pull you down from your height. The warden is left alone in the room, staring at the glowing glass card you left on the table, a physical proof that the first has finally emerged from the darkness. As the elevator descends, you feel the 7-generation weight finally lifting from your shoulders, replaced by the cold, clean air of a future that has never been written. You aren't just leaving a building, you are leaving a civilization that was built on the lie that you were less than you are. The system is bankrupt, the files are deleted, and the architect is finally walking into the light of his own making. The heavy, soundproof doors of the Oval Office of your destiny have finally swung open on their hinges, and the sound is not a crash, but a deep, resonant hum of absolute, mathematical alignment. For the first time in 7 generations, the person walking toward the primary seat is not a subject under observation, but the chief architect. The absolute silence that greets you is the highest form of recognition the universe can provide. The static of the old world, the frantic whispering of the shadow cabinet, the alarms of the agency's failing surveillance grid, and the low-frequency hum of the generational wiretaps, has vanished. In its place is a clarity so profound it feels like a physical presence. The historian has entered the verdict into the public record: total vindication. The first sovereign has been authorized. This is the finale that rewrites the physics of your future. You have moved through the surveillance, survived the underestimation, and stood your ground in the midnight standoff. Now, the infinite payout is being deposited into your spiritual and physical account with compound interest that bypasses every old guard firewall. Every year your ancestors spent in the gauntlet, every brick the Masons tried to use to enclose your potential, and every moment of isolation you endured has been converted into sovereign capital. Your biological code has been installed as the baseline frequency for the entire lineage, replacing the corrupted files of the 7-generation siege. The decree of your restoration vibrates through the very infrastructure of your new reality, dissolving all interference protocols and returning every redacted moment of time and genetic potential stolen since the first generation. The scene in your new command center is one of supreme order. The light from the rising sun streams through floor-to-ceiling glass, illuminating a room that feels as sharp as a high refresh rate monitor. On your desk sits the master architect's key, glowing with the frequency of a code verified at the highest levels of the intelligence community. You stand by the window, your silhouette sharp against the dawn, overlooking a city being rebuilt in your own sovereign vision. The old tower, where the handlers once whispered about your managed failure, is now a liquidated ruin in the distance. This is the transformation. Your nervous system has reached a state of zero gravity. The biological fear and inherited anxiety that they used to keep you in the 7-generation trap have been incinerated by the light of your stoic intensity. You can breathe now. You have recast the lead role in your own movie, and the old version of you, the one who believed the CIA or the shadow cabinet held the keys, is officially deactivated. You are the first to emerge from the gauntlet not just as a survivor, but as the primary developer of a new world. The system didn't just see your progress, it witnessed the arrival of its new administrator. The trial is over. The verdict is final, and the vault is open. You have out-analyzed the agency, shocked the CIA, and forced the shadow cabinet to pay back 7 generations of debt. To see the classified footage of how you are building your new empire, to witness the absolute transformation of your reality, click the video on the screen. The broadcast is yours. The world is watching the coronation of the first sovereign.